Good evening. With most of the southeast already under a foot of snow, it's now started snowing again and is expected to continue throughout the night. It's been, of course, a day of chaos in the region, with roads blocked, hundreds of schools closed, factories half empty, and dozens of villages cut off. Temperatures are falling fast and could drop to -15 tonight. Police tell us the roads will be treacherous. They advise people to stay at home. More than 400 snowplows and gritting lorries will work through the night to try to keep roads clear. In Kent and southeast Essex, 2 feet of snow has fallen in places. For the first of our reports, Philip Hornby from a TVS helicopter.
The worst hit area, the Isle of Sheppey, cut off for 12 hours. The A249, the only road onto the island, was blocked by drifts up to 4 feet deep. The King's Ferry Bridge, deserted. Snowplows eventually broke through at lunchtime, but with more snow this afternoon, the island has remained paralysed throughout the day. The Maidstone to Ashford line was blocked with trains abandoned. 200 passengers spent the night on this and 4 other trains, stuck in huge drifts. In Essex, trains were delayed for several hours because the line between Wickford and Southend was blocked. And aircraft were grounded at Southend Airport in nearly 2 feet of snow. The worst weather conditions in living memory. Road conditions in Essex were described as appalling. There were many minor accidents, but no one was seriously hurt. Back in Kent, traffic was moving slowly on Bluebell Hill near Maidstone. The road was closed for a time last night, and today lorry drivers were advised by police to find another route. But main roads throughout Kent have remained relatively clear. The M2 and M20 are down to 1 or 2 lanes with 30-mile-an-hour speed restrictions imposed. And traffic around the Dartford Tunnel was moving freely, and with less traffic on the roads, there were fewer problems than normal. Further down the coast, the city of Rochester was under a thick blanket of snow, and again, road conditions made it impossible for many people to get to work. Southern Water were faced with dozens of requests for help because of burst pipes, but they could only call on 150 of the 700 workforce at their base in Chatham. In Canterbury there was less snow, but even here about 6 inches fell. And at Dover, where visibility was poor, cross-channel hovercraft and ferries managed to run a service, but not much chance of escaping the wintry weather. It's been snowing all over France too, with temperatures there as low as 13 degrees. East Sussex escaped the worst of the snow and all the main roads were passable, but about 6 inches fell in 24 hours. From the air, it was clear that farmers in the southeast will have a huge task getting food to their animals, including hundreds of early newborn lambs. Dozens of tiny villages throughout the southeast remain cut off from the outside world. Temperatures have remained well below zero, enough to freeze the sea, and that only happens every 20 years.
Back on the ground, things look just as bad. Hardest hit are villages and remote farms. Main roads like the A249 near Stockbury are passable with care, but many smaller roads are blocked, and they're often the only link between a village and the outside world. So, forget the car, the only reliable way to get around is on foot. Unless, of course, you're a farmer, when a tractor becomes a vital means of transport. Farmers like Robin Brown at Stockbury have to take feed to sheep and cattle stranded in remote fields. More important to make sure the animals have water, as supplies constantly freeze over.
I'm only 30 and it's the deepest I've ever seen it up this way anyway.
Did you expect it this bad?
No, last week I expected 1 or 2 inches and it was rather a surprise this weekend, I'm afraid. They don't usually come as quick as this.
You've got cattle as well, haven't you?
Yes.
Have you had much of a job with them?
No, they're along the road a little bit further away, but we can still get to them at the moment, as long as it doesn't get too deep. And
what were they like when you found them?
Yesterday morning, they was covered in snow, and where the body heat, they had icicles on them about 4 or 5 inches long. It's very, very pretty to look at this time of year, but it's not very warm in the mornings, I'm afraid.
Lovely to look at, cold to walk about in, and even more dramatic just up the road from Stockbury, nearer the coast.
Welcome to the Isle of Sheppey. Today, a very, very cold welcome. More like Siberia than the Kent coast, a complete whiteout. And it's getting worse. This is the King's Ferry Bridge, the bridge on the only road onto the Isle of Sheppey. The island has been cut off by at least 3 feet of snow on this bridge. A police Range Rover tried to battle its way through at 4 o'clock this morning but failed. And it wasn't until about midday that the first snow ploughs managed to get through. Even now there's very little traffic on the road, it's getting dark and the snow is beginning to fall again.
Many small villages were also cut off from the outside world. They were snowbound, no milk, papers or postal deliveries. Roads were impassable without four-wheel drive vehicles. So no school for children, no work for the adults.
How long can you stay in a sort of siege mentality like this?
Well, money-wise, only a couple of days, really, but it's a bit risky going out, you know.
What other sort of transport is that you can use?
Well, none. There's no... Well, there are buses up here, but they won't be coming up here now, I shouldn't think.
You'll have to walk.
Yes.
A pretty winter snow scene maybe, but if the freezing weather continues, a tough time will face villages in outlying areas like this one at Ottham, south of Maidstone. The elderly suffer most, so villagers will have to rally round to check on their welfare. With no public transport, emergency ambulance, fire and police services will be hard put to cope with blocked roads over the next few days. But most families have been sensible. They've stocked up with extra food and heating fuels in preparation. And despite the unpleasant side of being snowbound, nothing dampens the British spirit.
Well, keeping the southeast on the move is being masterminded at police headquarters in Maidstone. And from the control room there, Kathy Alexander now reports.
OK, the AA will be with you in due course. At the moment, they're running anything between 3 to 4 hours, I'm afraid. So if you can keep warm, if you have any worries about getting too cold, give us a ring back.
A short time ago, the Centre of Traffic Control in Kent was still working flat out. While it's been impossible for many people to get to work at all today, the operations staff have been at double strength, answering emergency calls from snowbound motorists all over the county. One of their main tasks has been keeping the picture up to date, advising drivers and motoring organisations as roads either open or become blocked. The calls have been non-stop since this morning.
Yes, certainly much busier than normal. Yesterday afternoon and again today, the volume of work we're handling in here is well up on what we would normally deal with.
What about the number of accidents and breakdowns?
Well, we're dealing with approximately 50% more than we would do normally, and unfortunately a lot of the minor breakdowns are totally unnecessary. If people went out and were properly prepared for the situation that presents itself now, they'd save us and themselves a lot of trouble.
And what of tonight and tomorrow? Snow is already falling. Conditions presumably will freeze overnight. What advice do you have for drivers?
Well, the advice, again, is, as we gave yesterday, unless your journey is absolutely necessary, please don't travel.
There's been some criticism about the time it took for snowploughs to clear some of the major roads in Kent, but the County Council have defended their response.
Mr Cottrell, how do you respond to the criticism of the county that not enough was done and you were too slow to get going?
Well, I can understand a number of people being a bit fed up, having great difficulty getting into work this morning. Indeed, I did myself. But I think that criticism is not really fair. We have 130 snowploughs working flat out, 300 men. They've been working virtually continuously since late on Saturday night. And all of the main roads in Kent are clear at this point in time. The snowfall was really very dramatic, up to about 2 feet in some places. And it's still a fact that a number of the minor villages on the minor roads are still cut off. But we're working as hard as we can to get them free to the main road network as quickly as possible.
People say that you don't grit or you don't salt early enough and you don't start ploughing early enough. How do you decide when to put that sort of thing into action?
We always salt before a frost. We have very sophisticated weather forecasts from the Met Office, not the sort of weather forecasts that you good people put out on TVS. And we always grit before there's a frost. But when it's going to snow heavily, to put down salt beforehand would be absolutely useless. You have to get the salt off the road to a very large extent before the salt is effective in working. And so what we aim to do when there's a heavy fall of snow is to get the ploughs onto the vehicles, get ploughing on the main roads, the motorways and the trunk roads, and then on the remainder of the A-class network, and to salt behind the ploughing operation.
Well, I must say that if County had listened to our forecaster, Ron Lobeck, he was actually smack on Friday, and you wouldn't have got better advice than that. But just finally and quickly, if we knew we were going to get more snow, like the Russians or the Americans, could we be better geared up to it?
No, I don't think so, within the resources that are available. I mean, 130 snow ploughs really is an awful lot of plant and equipment working on Kent's roads.
So we just got to grin and bear it, have we?
No, I think the problem in this country is that it's not predictable in the way that it is in Canada and the United States. We don't know until a few hours, or days maybe, beforehand, that it's actually going to occur. And it's that sort of unpredictability which I think means that many people find great difficulty in coping with the problem when it first occurs.
Mr. Cattell, thanks for coming in. Good luck on your way home.
Thank you very much.
Now, the weather is rapidly worsening tonight. We hear that snow is falling heavily again over a large part of the southeast. The advice is if you do have to venture out, most roads and rail lines are still open, but it's very slow going on most routes. We'll have the latest information for you at the end.
It's the coldest night for years, with worse to come.